The illa is basically hidden defects in the hadith. Now, there isn't a clear definition of what illa is. Illa just basically means defect. There isn't a clear definition of what illa is. Illa basically is something which it's so hidden that at first glance you will not be able to see the problem, because you will assume that there is no problem. Okay, but actually there is a hairline fracture, and you're only able to capture that hairline fracture if you have a lot of isnads and turuqs for. If you read more on the definition of isnad, of i'lal, of illa, then you can look at my PhD thesis. I think it's chapter 6. Salan has it, and everybody else has it. There's a whole chapter on illat here, or in the thesis. You can look at that. I try to kind of look for some universal qawaid for illa. Anyway, Imam Bukhari's as far as the Sahih is concerned, the final two conditions is Adam al-Shuzuz and Adam al-Illa, that the hadith has to be free from Shaz narrations, and it has to be free from Illa. So Imam Bukhari's, the way he mitigates and the way he gets rid of Shaz narrations and Illa is much more superior than Imam Muslim's. فلأن من انتقد على البخاري من الأحاديث أقل عدد ممن انتقد على مسلم, because the ahadith of Bukhari that have been criticized by the ulama are less than the ones that have been criticized for Imam Muslim. Okay, so if we were to take a conservative number, Imam Daraqutni, who was the one of the first people to criticize al-Bukhari and Muslim, we find that Imam Daraqutni, he criticized 210 ayats of Bukhari and Muslim, 210, and all 210 Imam Ibn Hajar deals with them in his book, in the Muqaddamah of his book of Fath. Sorry, he actually deals with, he goes one by one through every single one of those criticisms, and he proves that Ad-Daraqutni was wrong. But nevertheless, Imam Daraqutni did criticize 200 riwayats, not criticizing them because they were weak, criticizing them that they did not live up to the expectations of Bukhari and Muslim. So, not that they were weak, it's just that they did not live up to the expectations that the authors stipulated for themselves. Yep. So, if we were to take the riwayats of how many riwayats, how many hadiths did Imam Daraqutni, did he criticize them, we find that he criticized, from Ibn Hajar's other books and Fath al-Bari, we find that he criticized a total of 210 ahadith, 210 ahadith, the Sahihain. Out of the 210 ahadith of the Sahihain, the ahadith that have been criticized from al-Bukhari are less than 80. Okay, less than 80. So let's say 80 ahadith of Bukhari have been criticized. Yeah. 32 ahadith. So those 80 hadiths come alone in Firad of Bukhari. They come alone in Bukhari. Muslims don't share those ahadith. There are certain hadiths in Sahih Bukhari which is not found in Muslim, certain hadiths in Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, and certain hadiths which are found in both of them, and that's why we call it muttafaq alayh. Okay, so 80 of the hadiths which are only found in Sahih al-Bukhari and not Muslims have been criticized by Imam Daraqutni. 32 of the riwayats, excluding this 80, 32 of the riwayats, there's muttafaq alayh. So 32 riwayats that Imam Daraqutni has criticized, both Muslim and Bukhari have narrated those. And the rest, which is 98, 98 ahadith have been only transmitted narrated by Imam Muslim. So we can easily see from this figure that the ahadith that have been criticized by Daraqutni for Sahih Muslim is 98. It is more 18 more than the ahadith that were criticized for Imam al-Bukhari. Okay. من الأحاديث أقل عدد من مسلم هذا مع اتفاق العلماء على أن البخاري كان أجل من مسلم في العلوم. This despite the fact that the ulama have conceded that al-Bukhari is more superior to Muslim في العلوم, in the sciences. What do you mean by في علوم الحديث? The sciences of ahadith. وأعرف بصناعة الحديث منه, and he is more knowledgeable in the craft of hadith. Yeah, he is more knowledgeable in the craft of hadith. One is علوم الحديث, right? And the other one is صناعة الحديث. Now, صناعة الحديث, nobody uses that, but the difference between علوم الحديث and صناعة الحديث, the word صناعة or مصنع means factory. Sana'a means profession. Pesha in Urdu, we call it profession. Okay.
Sheikh, I think you know when you move your head here and there, yeah. I think your voice, I think it varies the volume. You got a different mic or something today?
Yeah, I'm using the internal mic.
I think, yeah, the quality is okay. I think it's just when you're moving, I think the volume is dropping.
Is it dropping a lot?
I think it is dipping quite a lot, and then it comes up again.
Achha, so I have to stick like that.
Maybe if you stay in.
You know, yeah. I'm a charismatic speaker. Is that better though?
Yeah, this is the mic is good, but I think when you move, I think it struggles.
Well, then, okay, teach without the charisma then. So, علوم الحديث, two things. علوم الحديث, صناعة الحديث. علوم الحديث is what we're reading, مصطلح الحديث, and the different sciences of hadith. What we mean by science is basically different topics. Okay, it's not a science, it's different topics. So in the topics you have topics related to the rawi, topics related to the isnad, topics related to shuzuz, topics related to illah, right? And there's mainly 65, which were 165 of these topics which were formulated by Imam Ibn Salah. Is that better?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think the mic is struggling.
Achha. Okay, just give me a minute. Let me see if I can find something. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. The thing is that I can't find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my phone. Okay. Hello?
Okay, Sheikh. Yeah.
I'm going to leave this one. Bilal, can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, I can hear you, Sheikh.
Is that better?
Yes, so far looks good.
Okay. Let me know because it's on my iPhone.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of battery. Hold on. Sorry about this.
Okay.
I'll have to buy a proper. Let's have a look. See if I can go on my my Wi-Fi has been messing around. That's the problem. I can't connect my iPad to it. Sorry, just give me 2 minutes, yeah. Sorry about this.
No worries.
Okay, my iPad is not connecting for some reason. Okay, is this working for the time being? Blood?
Yeah, this is clear, Sheikh.
Okay, let's carry on. So, so we were talking about two things. So I'm not directly looking at the camera, so you'll probably see me from the side. كان أجل من مسلم في العلوم. So علوم الحديث is the sciences of the hadith. Sciences is it's not the, although in translations and things like that we write science of hadith, but it's not really a science, and it's not science definitely in the sense of science versus art. Ulum al-Hadith is, to a certain extent, it is more like an art because it's a craft. You need to be able to make some quality to judgment, okay? But by ulum, we mean the mustalah al-Hadith, what we're doing now. Sana'at al-Hadith, or the craft of Hadith, is the actual application of the ulum al-Hadith to the rawis and actually the application of the ulum al-Hadith. That's called Sana'at al-Hadith, and in order to come up with the conclusion. Is that okay? That's the difference.
Sorry, Sheikh, I've just realized that I've prepared some of the text already, so if it makes it easy for you, I don't mind reading it.
Oh, it's up to you. I mean, it's not easy or not easy for me. I just kind of give students the opportunity to read. So if you want to read, that's fine.
Yeah, I might have made many mistakes, but inshallah.
I'll correct.
وعرف بصناعة الحديث منه وأن مسلما تلميذه وخريجه ولم يزل يستفيد منه.
Who is reading? Arsalan.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on.
ويتبع آثاره حتى لقد قال الدارقطني لولا البخاري لما راح مسلم ولا جاء. Okay,
so وأن مسلما, so few things here, right? There are few kind of reasons why Imam Ibn Hajar thinks that Bukhari is greater than Imam Muslim. Number one is, first of all, the empirical evidence in the Sahih al-Bukhari and in the Muslim shows that Bukhari's narrations that have been criticized are less, at least by 18. If we take the ones where both of them have been criticized, which is 32, at least by 18, Muslim is 18 more. That's first evidence. The second evidence is that it is unanimous, everybody knows that Al-Bukhari is a better hadith scholar than Muslim. That's the second evidence. And number three is وَأَنَّ مُسْلِمًا تِلْمِيذُهُ, that Muslim is his student. وَخِرِّيجُهُ, and somebody who graduated from him. Khirij, from the word kharaja, means to come out. Khirij means that who graduated from his hands. وَلَمْ يَسْتَفِيدُ مِنْهُ, and he still benefits from him. وَيَتَّبِعْ آثَارَهُ, and follows his footsteps. Okay, remember when Imam Muslim came to Bukhari the first time and heard hadith from him, he said, دَعْنِي أُقَبِّلُ رِجْلَيْكِ يَا أَمِيرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ فِي الْحَدِيثِ, that let me kiss your feet. or Amir al-Mu'mineen of Hadith. One of the very interesting things that you will know is that none of the ulama of the Kutub al-Sitta, the 6 books, were actually Arabs. That's very, very strange. They weren't Arabs, they were all Central Asians. Imam Bukhari was from Bukhara, okay, near Samarkand. Imam Muslim was from Nisapur. Imam Tirmizi was from Uzbekistan, in Tirmiz. Imam Abu Dawood was from Sijistan, again that's Uzbekistan. Right. Imam Nasai was from Mawara ul-Nahar. Imam Ibn Majah was also from Qazvin, which is somewhere in Far East. So that's quite interesting that none of them were actually Arabs. That's just a by comment. حتى لقد قال الدارقطني, to the extent that Imam Daraqutni said لولا البخاري لما راح مسلم ولا جاء. Had it not been for Bukhari, Imam Daraqutni says, had it not been for Bukhari, then Imam Muslim wouldn't have gone, or he wouldn't have come. In everyday terminology, if you want to, in everyday vernacular language, if you have to translate that, you can translate that Muslim wouldn't have known if he was coming or going. Yeah. When you say about someone that I don't know if this person is coming or going, it basically means that this person doesn't know what's happening, right? Ana ya jana, you can say raha wala jaa. So has it not been for Bukhari, then Imam Muslim basically wouldn't have been Muslim. That's what he's saying. You know, he wouldn't have reached that status. Jisab.
ومن ثم أي ومن هذه الحيثية وهي أرجحية شرط البخاري على غيره قدم صحيح البخاري على غيره من الكتاب المصنفة في الحديث
من الكتب المصنفة
من الكتب المصنفة في الحديث.
Okay, ومن ثم, and because of that, ثم refers to like tilka, that. ثم is غير منصرف. So he's interpreted ومن ثم أي ومن هذه الحيثية. From this point of view, what is this point of view? وهي أرجحية شرط البخاري على غيره. That the what is this from this point of view? Yeah, what is this point of view? That is that the preponderance of the conditions of Bukhari, or the privileging of the conditions of Bukhari over others, قدم صحيح البخاري على غيره من الكتب المصنفة في الحديث. Sahih al-Bukhari has been put forward, has been given pride of place over other books, كتب المصنفة, other authored books in hadith. So because of all of these things, أرجحية في العدالة والضبط، أرجحية في الاتصال، أرجحية في عدم الإعلال وعدم الشذوذ، يقول الإمام ابن حجر أن البخاري قد قدم على غيره من الكتب المصنفة في الحديث. Bukhari is first. ثم صحيح مسلم لمشاركته للبخاري في اتفاق يجي كريم.
في اتفاق العلماء على تلقي كتابه بالقول أيضا سوى ما علل.
في اتفاق العلماء على تلقي كتابه بالقبول. Then after Bukhari comes Muslim. Why? لمشاركته, because he shares with al-Bukhari the position or the unanimous decision of the ulama of accepting his book. Okay, talaqi kitabihi bil qabul, the unanimous decision of the ulama of accepting his book. Also, siwa ma ullila, other than the ahadith which have been ma'lul. Okay, other than the hadith which has been criticized. So, for example, the 98 that ad-Daraqutni has criticized, etc. Carry on.
ثم يقدم في الأرجحية من حيث الصحية ما وافقه شرطهما، لأن المراد به رواتهما مع باقي شروط الصحيح، ورواتهما قد حصل الاتفاق على القول بتعديلهم بطريق اللزوم، فهم مقدمون على غيرهم في رواياتهم، وهذا أصل لا يخرج عنه إلا بالدليل.
Yeah, so Sahih Bukhari first, then Sahih Muslim. ثم يقدم في الأرجحية, and then as far as which ahadith should go first, because of the conditions, من حيث الصحيح, as far as Sahih, we will say ما وافقه شرطهما. Yeah, those that correspond with the conditions of Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. Now, what does it mean by shart? What does it mean by condition? لأن المراد به, because المراد, what is intended by به, أي لأن المراد بالشرط, what is intended by the condition is رواتهما مع باقي شروط الصحيح. What is intended by the word shart when we say ala shart al-Bukhari or ala shart al-Muslim is basically the narrators, the status of the narrators, in addition to all the other conditions of the Sahih. Now, do you understand what that means? When we say this hadith is according to the shart of Bukhari, have you heard this expression? This hadith is according to the shart of Bukhari, or this hadith is according to the shart of Muslim.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we basically say this, that basically means that obviously the first thing is that the obvious ones is if it's a shart of Bukhari, then there can't be there can't be illa and there can't be shaz, right? And the isnad cannot be broken. Those are obvious, right? Those are obvious for any Sahih hadiths, not only for the hadiths of Bukhari and Muslim. So that's generic to all of the Sahih hadiths, okay? Because if there's shaz or illa, then it makes the hadith not Sahih. If there is breaking the isnad, then it makes the hadith not Sahih. Not necessarily da'if, but not Sahih. Okay, that's the obvious. So what does it mean when we say ala shart al-Bukhari or ala shart al-Muslim? What that basically means is the types of narrations or the types of narrators. I'm just going to just hold on. Yeah, the types of narrators that Al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim include in their Sahih. Okay, now in order to be able to know the types of so remember we were basically saying that there's maratib of the isnad, there are different levels of the isnad, different types of isnads. Nafi and Ibn Umar, Malik and Nafi and Ibn Umar is the highest level of isnad. Yeah, there are lower levels of isnad, for example Amr ibn Shu'ayb and Abihi and Jaddihi. So similarly, there are types of narrators. Some of them, like Imam Malik, right, is right at the top. Some of them, like I don't know, Sa'id al-Maslub is mawdu' right at the bottom. So when we say ala shart al-Bukhari or ala shart al-Muslim, we basically are talking about the kind of narrators that Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim include in their works. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, in order to be able to do that, this is where it becomes, it's no longer nazari, it's no longer an abstract theoretical knowledge. You basically need to go and learn who those narrators are. So, for example, Imam Ibn Hajar mentions in, just to give one example, how you do this, Imam Ibn Hajar mentions in Hadith Sari, if we were to take one narrator, let's take the one upon whom every single isnad is kind of a pivots on, which is Muhammad ibn Shihab, Abu Bakr ibn Muhammad ibn Muslim ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, known as Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, right? Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith, is teacher of Imam Malik. Okay, so predates Imam Bukhari, Imam Shafi, and everybody is a teacher of Imam Malik. Now, Imam Ibn Hajar says that the students who studied with Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, we can categorize them into 5 different categories. Yeah. Number 1, I'm going to be reading off one of them, just for your benefit. If you're thinking of what kind of commentaries I use to prepare for this, then I basically use three books in order to prepare for this lesson. Number 1 is a commentary of Nuzhat al-Nadar by Mullah Ali Qari. It's called Sharh Nukhbat al-Fikr. Sharh Nukhbat al-Fikr by Mullah Ali Qari. And then I use 2 books which are not commentaries of Nuzhat al-Nadar, but they're commentaries on other hadith books. So the one that I found the best is something called Zufr al-Amani by Maulana Abdul Hayy Lakhnawi. Maulana Abdul Hayy Lakhnawi was an Indian scholar, but was a stalwart hadith scholar. In fact, Abdul Hayy Lakhnawi's book, Al-Jarh wa Ta'dil, is taught in Al-Azhar University at master's level. Okay, so he was a very stalwart. I don't think he was Hanafi. He started off as Hanafi, but then he became very kind of Shafi'i hadith-wise. He has a commentary on the Hidayah. And the other book that I use is Tadrib al-Rawi. Okay, but I find Lakhnawi's style in Arabic much more easier than Suyuti's, maybe because of the time lapse. Suyuti is very old, Lakhnawi is much closer. So in there, he mentions, well, it's taken from Ibn Hajar. He mentions that Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, let's say, if we were to take Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, as an example of a Rawi, right? And he says that Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri has got 5 levels of students, right? The tabqa, فَمَنْ كَانَ فَهُوَ الْغَايَةُ فِي الصِّحَّةِ, those students who are in the tabqa, in the first tabqa, they are the strongest, right? And the reason why is because they are the strongest scholars, because they were scholarly, but also because of their longevity, because of their long time. And I think Arsalan, I think I mentioned this in my thesis. Have you come across it?
Yeah.
So I haven't read my thesis in 10 years, so I don't remember what I wrote in it. But I think this point of Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, I mentioned in my thesis. So those people who are strong narrators, and they stayed with Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri for a long time. Okay, then their riwayats, when they're narrating from Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, already they were strong narrators, right? And secondly, they have stayed with Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri for a very long time, to the extent that they have a flavor for the mood of the teacher. They have a flavor, and now they can interpret the teacher's words, because they can say, no. In my experience, when he says this or when he says that, this is what he means. They're able to explain. Okay. In that category, we have somebody like Sufyan ibn Uyayna and others. So in this tabqa ula, Imam al-Bukhari uses people only from that first tabqa. Okay, as the maqsad, as the asal. Yeah, those are the people in the tabqa. Now, in order to find out who these people in the tabqa are, in the first tabqa, you need to go and study Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri and his students. There are books written about that. You need to study that. Then you have the second level, who also are sahih, right, and authentic scholars, but they did not spend as much time with Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri as the first group. So from there we have, for example, Imam al-Awza'i, Lays ibn Sa'ad, Imam Malik, Ibn Abi Dhib. These guys are tabqatu thani. Imam Bukhari also uses them as well. And then you have the third tabqa, okay, who may have studied here and there with him, and they're quite strong. Imam Bukhari uses them as not as the main part of the book, but he uses them as kind of mutaba'at and shawahid and things like that. Imam Muslim uses them as well. Then we got number 4, level 4 and level 5. Bukhari and Muslim will not use them. Okay, so if you were to take every single narrator like that, the major narrators, and you put their students in tabaqat, then Imam al-Bukhari will only take mainly from the first 2 tabqa and the third tabqa as just corroborative evidence. Imam Muslim will take from all 3. Okay, so that's what we mean by Shart al-Bukhari. So for the students of Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri who are in the 4th grade and in the 5th grade, Bukhari and Muslim will not take from them. So when we basically say ma wafaqa shartuhuma, if we were to take the ruwat, let's say the students of Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, then ma wafaqa shartuhuma here will mean the first and second tabaqat of Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri students, and for Muslim the third tabaqa. Okay, that's what it means here. Okay, we might have a student who is Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri student, right? But he might be in the 4th tabaqa or the 5th tabaqa, right? If his hadith, if he comes in the isnad of the hadith, then we will say that this hadith is not according to the shart of Bukhari and Muslim. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the shurut is related to the ruwats, the types and the gradations of rawis that they include in their books. That's what it means by Shart al-Bukhari or Shart al-Muslim. لأن المراد به. So now you can understand that this is where this nusha or ulum al-hadith, okay, starts moving away from a theoretical science or theoretical knowledge to more practical. Because now if you have just learned this theoretically, ala shart al-Bukhari and ala shart al-Muslim, and you don't go beyond that, and you don't find what it means by ala shart al-Bukhari and who are shart al-Bukhari, then that knowledge just will remain theoretical. It'll never be practical for you. But now if after this, if you go and you basically look into Shart al-Bukhari and you take Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri and you look at his students and you make a typography of his students, then you are doing practical application, صناعة الحديث. Okay, لأن المراد به رواتهما مع باقي شروط الصحيح, because what it means by shart is the rawis in addition to the other conditions, because you can still have a hadith which is sahih, but not according to the shart of Bukhari or Muslim. For example, the hadith might include a rawi which comes in the 4th darja of Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri students. He might still be sahih, authentic, okay, but it's not according to the shart of Bukhari. Well, still it's authentic. We're not talking about authenticity here. We're talking about a sahiyya, which is more authentic. Okay, we're not talking about authentic. Is it authentic as opposed to not authentic? Which is, we're talking about a higher level and degree of authenticity. Yeah. وَرُوَاتُهُمَا قَدْ حَصَلَ الْإِتِّفَاقِ عَلَى الْقَوْلِ. Yeah. So then somebody can ask, well, why do we have to? Why is there taqaddum? Why do the shart of Bukhari, the ruwat of Bukhari and Muslim come 3rd place after Bukhari and Muslim? So he says, وَرُوَاتُهُمَا قَدْ حَصَلَ الْإِتِّفَاقِ عَلَى الْقَوْلِ بِتَعْدِيلِهِ بِطَرِيقِ اللُّزُومِ. The narrators of Bukhari and Muslim have obtained credibility or authentication. قد حصل الاتفاق على القول بتعديلهم unanimously. They have unanimously obtained authentication بطريق اللزوم through how do I translate لزوم? Arsalan, what translation did Dr. Athar do?
I am not quite sure. I can get it up.
No, it's all right. It's okay. بطريق اللزوم basically means by dint of the argument. that would be the correct one. But by dint of the argument, or by dint, or by association, بطريق اللزوم, by association. What that basically means is that people have conceded, yeah, to the fact that the most Sahih books in Sunni Islam after the Quran is Bukhari and Muslim. As I understand the argument, have you understood that bit of the argument?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, بطريق اللزوم, by association, it will basically mean that everything which is inside the book, right, is also Sahih, and it's also of the highest order, including the ruwat. Yeah, the fact that the ulama have conceded superiority for Bukhari and Muslim automatically بطريق اللزوم, by dint of the argument or by association, automatically renders the ruwat of Bukhari and Muslim a higher status than the ruwat of other books of hadith. Now, do you understand what بطريق اللزوم means?
Yeah, they're because of their choosing of their narrators, because this is connected to their books, it's given preference over other books.
Yeah, so automatically the ruwats are given preference. Now, this is good, it's a good argument, but do you see that it's a circular argument?
Yeah, because then you'll have to accept that on the outset, but you're not actually looking at the narrators themselves. It's just like, it's because it's in the book, and then you look at the book and say the books are good because of the narrators.
Yeah, because how did the ulama ascertain? How did the ulama ascertain that Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim are the best? By looking at the ruwat, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they looked at the ruwat, and by looking at the ruwat, they accepted that the Bukhari and Muslim are the most Sahih books. And then they're basically saying, because Bukhari and Muslim are the most Sahih books, their ruwat have to be the most Sahih. So there is a circular argument there. Yeah, there is a circular argument there, but that's a secondary argument that Ibn Hajar is making. So it's not really a big deal. It's a circular argument he's making, right? Because the books have been accepted by everyone, the ruwat have been accepted by everyone. But actually, it's the opposite way around. Is because of the ruwat has been accepted by everyone, is the books have been given that status. Yeah. فهم مقدمون على غيرهم في رواياتهم. These ruwats are to be given a pride of place, are to be put forward before everyone, before every other narrators. Okay. وهذا أصل. Now this is a principle. لا يخرج عنه إلا بدليل. This is a principle which one should not deviate from, other than when there is an evidence going against that. Yeah. Let's see what kind of evidence. Right. So the Rawi, the Muhaqqiq, has got some good commentary on this. Right. Okay, so one of the conditions that he mentions, وَهَذَا أَصْلٌ لَا يُخْرَجُ عَنْهُ إِلَّا بِدَلِيلٍ. One of the conditions that the Muhaqqiq mentions is that this asl only stays when you do ri'ayat, when you take into consideration exactly the way that the Bukhari and Muslim have used those ruwats. So, for example, Rawi A, right, is a teacher. Rawi B is a student. Yeah, A is teacher and B is student in the Sahih al-Bukhari. Let's just take Sahih al-Bukhari. A is student, B is teacher. Okay, but you do sometimes have situations where the student is teaching the teacher. So then Rawi B becomes the teacher and Rawi A becomes the student. For example, Imam al-Tirmidhi in the Sunan al-Tirmidhi takes pride in the fact that there are 2 hadiths in the Sunan al-Tirmidhi which he narrated to al-Bukhari. He didn't hear from Bukhari, al-Bukhari heard from him. So the situation flipped. The student becomes the teacher becomes the student. So one of the conditions is that it needs to be exactly in the same format as Bukhari and Muslim used it. So now let's say if somebody uses those 2 narrators in another hadith, but actually in that narration, the student is the teacher and the teacher is the student, that's not ala shart al-Bukhari. Does that make sense? Because Bukhari had the shart that the teacher is the teacher and the student is the student, not the opposite way around. Because the opposite way around, Imam al-Bukhari didn't include that because maybe he found some illat there. Do you understand? So there are all of these, that's what it means. هذا وهذا أصل لا يخرج عنه إلا بدليل. So if you were to have a hadith where those same 2 people come in the isnad, but the student now in this isnad is a teacher and the teacher in this isnad is a student, then this will not come under ma wafaqahu shartuhuma. Yeah. Now the most famous book written on muwafaqat of Bukhari and Muslim is the book by Imam Hakim. Imam Hakim Abu Abdullah al-Nisapuri. He wrote a book called Al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain. Al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain. Now in the Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain, he included all of those hadiths which are not in the Sahih al-Bukhari or which are not in the Sahih Muslim, but the narrators are the same as the narrators of Bukhari and Muslim, and therefore they are ala shart al-Bukhari wa Muslim or ala shart al-Sahihain. And therefore he collected those, and this book then becomes kind of like a third Sahih book, Al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain. Okay, because all of the narrators in there are on the conditions, sharait of Bukhari and Muslim. However, Bukhari and Muslim did not include those hadiths. Now you can basically say, well, why didn't Bukhari and Muslim include those hadiths? Because Bukhari and Muslim had no intention of collecting every single Sahih hadith in the world. Right? They had a particular intention of collecting, let's say, 4,000 hadiths. Okay, because that was their limit. If you take out all of the, the repetitions, and they only collected 4,000 hadiths. There are many hadiths. It's just logistically it wasn't possible. They wanted to write a book which people can carry around. Okay, so it's not necessary that they've collected every hadith, but there are many hadiths which they have left out. There are many hadiths in Al-Adab al-Mufrad which is Sahih, which is not in the Bukhari. Okay, so then what happens is Imam Hakim comes along and he says, well, this is according to the shart of Bukhari, this is not in the Bukhari. This is in the shart of Muslim, it's not in the Muslim. This is shart of Sahihain. So he collected all of those. Now, the only problem with that is that Imam Hakim himself could not live up to the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim. And therefore, his book, Al-Mustadrak al-Sahihain, has been taken with a pinch of salt. And the person that then came and rectified that book, because saw that this book is very powerful, who came and rectified this book is Ibn Taymiyyah's student, Imam Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi. Imam Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi was Ibn Taymiyyah's student. Remember who Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi was? Imam Ibn Hajar, when he went to the Haram the first time, and he drank Zamzam and he did dua and he said, Allah, give me more knowledge of hadith than Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi. So now you can understand the status of Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi. So Imam Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi is the one who came and he kind of filtered it, he kind of sorted it out a bit. And he did a takhrij of all of the hadith of Mustadrak al-Sahihain. So now it has become famous that when you narrate a hadith from Mustadrak al-Mustadrak by Imam Hakim, you have to also look at what Imam al-Dhahabi has said. Now, fortunately for us, the published version of the Mustadrak also has Imam Zahabi's commentary on it. So this is the formula that ulama have used. أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك ووافقه الذهبي. What is it? أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك. Hakim has quoted this hadith in Mustadrak. ووافقه الذهبي, and Imam al-Dhahabi has agreed with him. When you have that formula, أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك ووافقه الذهبي, then that means that that particular hadith is على شرط البخاري ومسلم. Yeah, but when you just have أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك and Imam Dhahabi did not do muwafaqat on it, he did not agree to it, then that hadith is not on the shart of Bukhari and Muslim. So it's only when it's أخرجه البخاري في أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك ووافقه الذهبي. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go for a break, inshallah. Okay, so Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Ji sab, everybody here?
Yes, Sheikh. Start now.
Ji sab, padiye sab.
فإن كان الخبر على شرطهما معا كان دون ما أخرجه مسلم أو مثله وإن كان على شرط أحدهما فيقدم شرط البخاري وحده على شرط مسلم وحده تبعا لأصل كل منهما فخرج
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فإن كان الخبر على شرطهما كان دون ما أخرجه مسلم أو مثله. Now, if the hadith, which is according to the shart of Bukhari and Muslim, right? If the hadith is according to both of their sharts, then the status of the hadith is either below Muslim or on the same level of Muslim. Yeah. وإن كان على شرط أحدهما, and if the hadith, let's, by way of example, let's use the book Mustadrak, okay? Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, so that it's not confusing. And Imam Zahabi has done muwafaqat on it. That's our case, okay? So if the hadith of Mustadrak is according to the conditions of both of them, then that hadith, its status is either at the same level of Muslim or below Muslim, okay? The reason why it can be either on the same level of Muslim is because the rawi might be, so for example, the rawi might be from the third tabaqa, okay, the third tabaqa of Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. Now, the third tabaqa of Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri students is only used by Imam al-Bukhari as mutaba'at, as supplementary evidence. Imam Bukhari never uses the third degree or third level of students as the asl. So every single time when you have a hadith book, or let's say Bukhari or Muslim, there are, even within Bukhari and Muslim, there are different gradations of hadith, of Sahih. So let's take Sahih al-Bukhari. Sahih al-Bukhari, in Sahih al-Bukhari, you will get Imam Bukhari bringing what we call the base hadith or the core hadith, right? Which is known as the Hadith al-Bab, which is his main reason for bringing that hadith. That will be his most famous isnad. And then in order to support that isnad, he may get less isnad of a lesser degree than the one that he brought as the asl. So we call it the asl Bukhari and the shawahid of Bukhari. So the shawahid of Bukhari, the ruwats might be of a lesser degree than the asl, right? Imam Bukhari will not include the riwayat of the lesser rawis as an asl, but he will bring them as mutaba'at, as supplementary evidence. Yeah. Then you've got the third types of hadith in Sahih Bukhari, which is known as the mu'allaqat. The mu'allaqat are those hadiths where Imam Bukhari brings them without an isnad. And normally he uses those hadiths as chapter headings. So they're actually hadith, but because they don't conform to his conditions, right, then you will basically see that he doesn't say Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He just has the text of the hadith in the chapter heading. So I give a number of examples of these in my thesis. I think it's chapter 5 on ilal. So you can look at it there. So what it means by aw mithlahu is that it might be that the rawi that is in the Mustadrak is found in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, but that rawi in the Sahih Bukhari is a supplementary rawi. It's of the tabaqa al-thalitha of Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri student, but it's from the tabqa asl, it's from the asl of Imam Muslim. The Imam Muslim uses 1, 2, 3 as his asl. he uses sometimes 4 as his supplementary. Imam Bukhari only uses 1, 2 for his asl, and he uses the 3rd for his supplementary. So the rawi might be a supplementary rawi for Imam Bukhari, okay, and an asl for Imam Muslim, and therefore it is on the same level as Imam Muslim. Okay. وإن كان على شرط أحدهما فيقدم شرط البخاري وحده على شرط مسلم وحده تبعا لأصل كل منهما. And if the condition is only for one of them, so let's say that this هذا الحديث على شرط بخاري, hadith number 1, هذا الحديث على شرط مسلم. The hadith which is according to the shart of Bukhari is above the hadith which is on the shart of Muslim. Therefore, what do you get is, you get the highest level of hadith is what we call muttafaq alayh. Bukhari and Muslim have agreed to it. Then you have hadith infarada bil Bukhari, hadith which is only found in Bukhari. Then you find hadith which is only found in Muslim. That's your 3 categories, right? These 3 categories are known as asl. Then you get 3 more fara', right? Fara' or basically subsidiary. In computer language, you call it parent node and child node. You get subsidiary nodes. You get those hadiths which is shart of Bukhari and Muslim, they are below Sahih Muslim. That's category number 4. Then you get ala shart al-Bukhari, right? That goes below the shartihima, and then you get ala shart Muslim. So those are your 6 categories. 3 of them are asl and 3 of them are fara'. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sheikh,
Yeah.
is there any example where like Bukhari or Muslim haven't included the hadith, but because it does follow their conditions, but the narrator himself is from like the highest level?
There is. I'll find some examples for you next time. Yeah.
Sure.
Just remind me in the text. I'll get an example for all of these actually. So what does Imam Ibn Hajar says? فَخَرَجَ لَنَا مِنْ هَذَا سِتَّةُ أَقْسَامٍ تَتَفَاوَتُ دَرَجَاتِهَا فِي الصِّحَّةِ. So from there, we have extrapolated 6. It says فَخَرَجَ لَنَا. Right. Somebody has taken out for us. We can, in English, that doesn't make sense. We can say extrapolated from this 6 types where the different degrees are different or different degrees of sihha. Yeah. So what are the 6, Arsalan? Can you tell me the 6?
So we have that which Bukhari, so it's muttafaq alayh Bukhari and Muslim, and then that which Bukhari narrates alone, and then that which Muslim narrates alone, then that which conforms to both of their conditions, but they did not narrate that. And then that which,
what does it mean by shart al-Bukhari and Muslim? What does it mean by shart?
It's looking at their the level of the narrators.
Yeah, narrators, ruwat. Okay, carry
on. So then that which conforms to Bukhari's conditions only, and then that which conforms to Muslim conditions only.
Yeah. So the first 3 are known as the asl. The second 3 are known as the fara'.
Yeah.
وثم
وثم قسم سابع وهو ما ليس على شرطهما اجتماعا وانفرادا وهذا التفاوت إنما هو بالنظر إلى حيثية المذكورة. Okay.
وثم قسم سابع. There is a 7th قسم of Sahih. وهو ما ليس على شرطهما اجتماعا وانفرادا. Those hadiths are not found in Bukhari and Muslim, and neither are they according to the shart of Bukhari and Muslim اجتماعا أو انفرادا, or singularly or on their own, meaning that neither is it the shart of Bukhari or Muslim, or neither is it the shart of Bukhari and Muslim. اجتماعا is both, infiradan is alone. Yeah. But these are still sahih, but they do not conform to the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, either together muttafaq alayh or alone. وهذا التفاوت. Now, this tafawut, so these are 7. So what do you think that will be, Arsalan? The 7th qism?
That which is in like the Sunnah Arba.
Yeah, like any other hadith which is sahih but not found in Bukhari, Muslim, and not according to the shart, like any other hadith in the Sunan Arba. Yeah, and all other sahih hadiths.
Yeah.
وهذا التفاوت إنما هو بالنظر إلى الحيثية المذكورة. Yeah, I just need to check one thing. Just give me 1 minute. He says, وهذا التفاوت, this difference of degree is only if we look at it from the point of view of the perspective that has been mentioned. What is al-haythiyya al-madhkura? I mean al-haythiyya al-madhkura min shart al-ruwat. Yeah, if we look at the conditions, the shurut, okay. If we were looking at the shart of Bukhari and Muslim from this perspective, right, these are 7 degrees. However, it's amma, from amma he's basically giving a different perspective. أما لو رجح قسم على ما فوقه بأمور أخرى تقتضي الترجيح فإنه يقدم على ما فوقه إذ قد يعرض للمفوق ما يجعله فائقا. So what we have discussed above is as far as the arjahiyya, which one is more rajih as far as the sihha is concerned, and most of that is done on the basis of looking at the shart of Bukhari and Muslim and things like that. But there may be instances where some other hadiths which are not found in Bukhari and Muslim and not according to the shart are actually more sahih than Bukhari and Muslim, right? Amma law rajaha qismun. So now if a type of hadith is preponderant or privileged on that which is generally higher than in status because of a third factor, bi umurin ukhra, because of another factor, then that hadith requires tarjih, requires to be put forward. Okay, فإنه يقدم على ما فوقه, because that hadith will be put above. So he's saying the same thing again. That hadith will be put above the one which it is generally below, because the one which is dominant has now got something which has made it higher. Okay, so for example, the example of this is if you were to take, I don't know, if you were to take like, if you were to take professions, yeah, like a doctor and a farmer, yeah. Now there is a difference in the profession as far as the doctor and the farmer is concerned. Now everybody will say that the doctor is of a higher degree than the farmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nobody will disagree with that. But at least for conservative reasons, let's agree that that's correct. The doctor is always higher, and the doctor will always be higher. But there may be certain things in the farmer, or certain, so that's one from one perspective, but there may be certain things in the farmer, certain qualities in the farmer, which demands that the farmer in that particular position is higher than the doctor. For example, the farmer might be the father of the doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. From that perspective, the farmer is more dominant and more superior than the doctor, because it has another murajjih, another tarjih, okay, which puts the which eclipses the tarjih of the doctor. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if we were looking at it purely from the point of view, right, of the ruwat, then we have this hierarchy of ahadith. But there may be some other factors, right? There may be other factors which preponderates the one that is not dominant, the one that is submissive in a lower degree to a higher degree. Okay. كما لو كان الحديث عند مسلم مثلا وهو مشهور قاصر عن درجة التواتر لكن حفته قرينة صار بها يفيد العلم فإنه يقدم على الحديث الذي يخرجه البخاري إذا كان فردا مطلقا. Yeah. For example, if there is a hadith in Muslim, it's mashhur hadith in the technical sense. However, it's not مشهور قاصر عن درجة التواتر. It's mashhur, which basically means that it falls below the level of tawatur. لكن حفته قرينة صار بها يفيد العلم. But there are some indications attached to it which gives it or boosts it to the level of علم النظري. فإنه يقدم على الحديث الذي يخرجه البخاري إذا كان فردا مطلقا. Then that hadith will be above that hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, which is fard mutlaq. Yeah. Do you understand what that means? So Haffatul Qara'in, remember we basically said that normally, other than a mutawatir, all the khabar ahad yufidu ghalabatul dhann. Yeah. Other than if there is haffatu bil muhtaf bil qara'in. What is muhtaf bil qara'in? Muhtaf bil qara'in, we've looked at three different things of muhtaf bil qara'in. Number one is, or one of them is that it might basically be narrated by a'immatul thiqat. Okay. For example, Imam Shafi from Abu Hanifa from Malik, and that bumps it up. So here we say that we've got Muslim riwayat, but the Muslim riwayat is muhtaf bil qarina, right? In order to go to muhtaf bil qarina, let's have a look at muhtaf bil qarina. Yeah, the first muhtaf bil qarina is right. الشرط محتف بالقرينة أخرجه الشيخان اختصوا. Yeah, so المسلسل بأئمة الحفاظ المتقنين, and then you have المشهور إذا كانت له طرق متباينة سالمة من ضعف الرواة والعلل. So it's a hadith mashhur in Sahih Muslim, but every single turuq, every single isnad that it has is sahih. Now, this hadith of Sahih Muslim will be privileged over that singular hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, right, which is of the level of ghalabatul dhann. Because the hadith of Sahih Muslim, its epistemological status changes from ghalabatul dhann to what we call ilmun nadhari, because all of the isnads, right, although it's not mutawatir, it's salim from du'f, right? So because of these kind of factors, individual hadiths might be higher status than that tartib. What that basically means is, now I will tell you something, and that is that even the ulama of hadith, when they talk about a hadith and when they're doing the sana'at al-hadith, Salam, what's the difference between ulum al-hadith and sana'at al-hadith?
Is ulum al-hadith, you just like, is it kind of more the terminological side of things?
Yeah, it's the theoretical knowledge. It's the theory.
The diraya. So the sana'at is, you're judging the hadith by looking at it.
Say that again?
And is it when you're kind of like looking and analyzing the hadith, like practically?
Yeah, so it's the application of the theory. It's applied hadith studies as opposed to theoretical hadith studies. Yeah. When we also see how much of usul have you done? Usul al-fiqh.
Usul al-fiqh, we're at qiyas now in
Usul al-shashi. Is that the only book you've done?
We've done like an introduction to al-waraqat.
Okay.
Like
have you read my introduction of Usul al-shashi, where I talk about the relationship between usul al-fiqh and fiqh?
No, I haven't. No.
Right, go back to it. In the introduction, I talk about the relationship between usul al-fiqh and fiqh. And is there a relation? And in there, I basically say some of the ulama, they say that there isn't actually a relation between usul al-fiqh and fiqh. There's more relationship between usul al-fiqh and ilm al-kalam rather than usul al-fiqh and kalam. Usul al-fiqh and fiqh. Nevertheless, that's a different discussion. Here, we find similar things that the ulama, when they basically talk about the theory, then they have a very nice hunky-dory theoretical model in mind. And even stalwart ulama like Ibn Hajar Asqalani, when they're talking theoretically, right, it's very nice and it's hunky-dory because theory is supposed to be nice. If the theory isn't nice, then you don't have a theory. Theories are supposed to have explanatory powers, right? Yes. But when it comes to actual application, a lot of this theory goes out of the window. You will not find anybody declaring a hadith to be sahih, right, on the basis of this typology. You will not basically say that this hadith is sahih because it's in Sahih al-Bukhari, right? The reason why people will say this hadith is sahih because it's in Sahih Bukhari is because somebody has already done the job. But you will not find, okay, you might find people say this hadith is sahih because it's in Sahih al-Bukhari, but you will not find ulama basically say, oh, this hadith contradicts this hadith. Yeah? This hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari, this hadith is in Sunan al-Tirmizi. The hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari is given preponderance because it's Sahih al-Bukhari over Sunan al-Tirmizi. You will not find the ulama do that. And when the ulama, they do that, right, then they apply that methodology inconsistently. They don't apply it consistently. It's only when it needs them. So, for example, you'll get Hanafis doing this a lot of the time. They'll basically say, "Oh, our madhab here corresponds with the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, and the Shafi'i madhab corresponds with the hadith of Sahih Sunan al-Tirmidhi or Sunan Abi Dawud. Sahih al-Bukhari is given preponderance over Sunan al-Tirmidhi." Right? That's just an easy point. Right? It's an easy point that they can make, because there are thousands and thousands of hadiths of Sahih al-Bukhari which go against the madhab of the Hanafis. Then they don't use that usul.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So my point here is, very rarely you will find that the ulama do isnad analysis and sana'atul hadith using this methodology of typology of books. That this hadith has to be given more privilege over this hadith because this hadith is found in Sahih Bukhari, unless you know there are asman zabin difference between the books. So if there's a Sahih Bukhari hadith and there's a hadith which is found in let's say Musnad al-Firdaus al-Dailami, then there is no comparison. And Musnad al-Firdaus al-Dailami, we know that most of the hadiths are weak in there. There is no comparison there, right? But if the competitors are close by, so for example Imam Abu Dawud or Imam Muslim Imam Ibn Majah or Imam Nasai, then the ulama don't use this methodology of this. This is not a proper methodology of doing hadith analysis. This is theory. Theoretically, it's good to understand the hierarchy and order. Muttafaq alayh is first, Bukhari is second, Muslim is third, Muttafaq ala Sharti is fourth, the Muttafaq ala Sharti al-Bukhari is fifth, Muttafaq ala Sharti Muslim is sixth. Then you've got all of the other Sahih hadiths which do not conform to this six. That's fine. As a theory, as a hunky-dory, nice way of conceptualizing the different maratib of the hadith, that's fine. But nobody really uses that, right, as a way of doing isnad analysis and as a way of doing hukum. That is actually a cheap and a weak way of doing isnad analysis. In fact, Imam al-Shawkani, in his book, Tuhfat al-Dhakirin, is the shara of Hisn al-Hasin. You know the book Hisn al-Hasin?
No.
The Fortress of a Muslim is the dua book, The Fortress of a Muslim, by Imam Jaziri. He has a commentary on that. It's a beautiful book. The commentary is a beautiful book by Imam Shawkani. It's called Tuhfat al-Dhakirin. In the beginning, Imam Shawkani actually criticizes Suyuti. But Suyuti does something similar in his Jami' al-Saghir and Jami' al-Kabir. And he says, in my book, any hadiths which come from Bukhari, Muslim, they're Sahih. Any which come from the Sunan al-Arba'a, then they're automatically Hasan. Any which come from these. He says, I'm not going to do that. That's a very cheap way. And it's a very easy way of doing. It's a very lazy way, he says, of doing isnad analysis. I'm going to go into every single hadith and look at the hadiths on their own merit rather than looking at what book it comes from. Right? Remember, last week I mentioned that it's not so much about the book; it's more about the genre. Yeah, and it's not even so much about the genre; it's about the individual hadiths. The genres are tolerated when it's not fiqh. Then we have a bit of license, but this as a theoretical stuff of knowing the maratib of the books, it's fine. It's hunky-dory. It gives us a nice architecture of the edifice of hadith studies, but isnad analysis is never done on this kind of basis. And even because this is a beginner's book, Imam Ibn Hajar is developing an architecture of the entire edifice. But when you even go into the Nukat of Ibn Salah by Imam Ibn Hajar, right, which is another Usul al-Hadith book that he's written, then you will find that even he doesn't. And the operating stuff here is this line. أما لو رجح قسم على ما هو فوقه بأمور أخرى تقتضي الترجيح فإنه يقدم على ما فوقه إذ قد يعرض للمفوق ما يجعله فائقا. Right. This is the operating line. This is how you actually do isnad analysis. That you take individual hadiths on its own merit. Right. Yeah. Okay, this is as a majmu', as a jami', as a kulli. We basically say the most sahih book after the Quran is Sahih Bukhari, right? Then we basically say that the ahadith of Sahih al-Bukhari generally are more sahih than the ahadith of Sahih or Sunan ibn Majah or Sahih ibn Hibban. These are general comments. But then when we go on to kind of individually, we we go to assess something, right? Then we have to make that individual assessment. And we do this kind of thing generally, right? So for example, Arslan, you're from Oldham, right?
Yeah.
Right. So Hume Grammar, we can basically say students from Hume Grammar, right? Hume Grammar is it's a brilliant school. It's a grammar school, it's a private school, right? Yeah. Hume Grammar is much better than Bluecoats or Hathershaw.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody will disagree with you. Or nobody will disagree with me if I say that, yeah?
Yeah.
But then taking that and saying that every single student of Hume Grammar is better than every single student of Bluecoats or Hathershaw, that's an incorrect analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you might have somebody who is in Hume Grammar and somebody who is in Bluecoats. The Bluecoats student might be better because naturally they're talented. But as a generic statement, we will say that Hume Grammar is better than Bluecoats. So here, as a generic statement, we're saying that these are the hierarchy of the architecture of the hadith, right? But we don't use that hierarchy to actually criticize and individually do isnad analysis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a very, and the reason why I have labored on this point, Arsalan and the other students, is because that's a very important point to remember, because I have seen people argue on this basis, right? Young students of hadith who studied Ibn Hajar, and they have argued on this basis. Oh, this is in Bukhari, this is in Mustadrak. There's no comparison. Actually, there is. So just bear that in mind. Yeah.
Sheikh, if I can kind of ask on that, is when you're comparing these two narrations now, do you even if like the one in Bukhari is Sahih and the one in Tirmidhi is Hasan, do you not even consider that? Because what came to mind when you mentioned usul was that I remember they looked at the Zahir and the Nas, and then there's a hadith in Bukhari which the Hanafis left and they went for another one. So does it even work for the Muhaddithin? Does it even work on the Sahih and Hasan? Like
no, here we're talking about so for example, a hadith might be a Hasan in Sahih Bukhari. Yeah, okay. No, it's not necessarily that Sahih Bukhari doesn't have Hasan hadiths, right? But the Hasan of Sahih Bukhari is of a much more higher degree. You might have a hadith in Tirmidhi, right, which is basically more Sahih than the one in Sahih Bukhari.
Okay, yeah.
So, for example, the hadith of Istinja bil Hajarain, where the Prophet did Istinja with two, Imam al-Tirmidhi basically says that hadith is found in Sahih al-Bukhari, right? And the hadith is also found in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. But the isnad of Bukhari and isnad of Tirmidhi are different. The same hadith, but the isnads are different, right? The madar of the isnad is Abu Israel. The person who narrates in Sahih al-Bukhari from from Israel is Yusuf. The person who narrates in Tirmidhi from Israel is his son Yunus ibn Israel. Imam al-Tirmidhi claims that his narration of the hadith is much more sahih than that of al-Bukhari. Do you understand? So that's why it's, as a generic statement, we can basically say that Sahih al-Bukhari is much more sahih, and generic the way understand the example of blue coats and Hume grammar. But then when we go on to look at individual students and pick out individual students, then we will have to look at the individual hadith. And that's only when there is a conflict. If there is no conflict, then you don't need to look at it. So, for example, Amin bil Jahar, the hadith of Amin bil Jahar, Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, right? Amir al-Mu'mineen fil hadith, Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, he's the madar of the isnad. There are two narrations from him. One is madda sawtahu and one is khaffa sawtahu, right? Hanafis basically take madda sawtahu, khaffa sawtahu basically means to say quietly, right? And that's why Hanafis don't do Amin, and others basically say madda sawtahu means to say it loudly. Same narrator, but there's two different isnad strands coming from him, right? Imam Tirmidhi basically says that the one that's Amin bil Jahar is more sahih than the one that is not Amin bil Jahar. It's only when you have conflicts like that, then you basically look at how do you reconcile between them. If there is no conflict, then it's fine. We're only talking about conflicts here. So yes, وكما لو كان الحديث الذي لم يخرجاه من ترجمة وصفت بكونها أصح الأسانيد كمالك النافع عن ابن عمر، فإنه يقدم على من فرد به أحدهما مثلا، لا سيما إذا كان في إسناده من فيه مقال. Another example is like a hadith الذي لم يخرجاه من ترجمة, the hadith of a of a narrator. Min tarjamatin basically means a narrator. Tarjama means biography. A hadith of a narrator which both of them have not included. And that narrator, wusifat bi kawniha asah al-asanid. And that isnad or narrator in the isnad has been known as the silsilat al-zahab, or the most sahih isnad. For example, Malik and Nafi and Ibn Umar. Okay, Malik and Nafi and Ibn Umar. Now, Malik and Nafi and Ibn Umar is known as silsilat al-zahab. Yeah. فإنه يقدم على من فرد به أحدهما. مثلا لا سيما إذا كان في إسناده من فيه مقال. So this hadith will be given preference over the hadith that only one of them, من فرد به أحدهما, only one of them, if it's munfarid, if only one of them has narrated the hadith. Right? مثلا لا سيما إذا كان في إسناده من فيه مقال. Specifically, if in the isnad of Bukhari or Muslim there is somebody who there is criticism on. What that basically means is, let's say we have one hadith, right? Remember, when they're talking about hadith, you have to be astute and vigilant as to what they mean by hadith. Do they mean by the hadith the matan, or do they mean by the hadith the isnad? Right? Here, by the hadith, he means the isnad. You have to always ask yourself, what does he mean? Does he mean the matan, or does he mean the isnad? Because sometimes they interchangeably use the word for isnad and hadith. So here he's saying, look, there is a hadith. Let's say this hadith is narrated by a companion. Yeah. Let's take Amin bil Jahar, hypothetically, right? And there are two different versions to this hadith. In one version, right, it's the same hadith, but one word is different. The narrator is the same, and all of the narrators are the same until there's one part where it changes, or that's where the turuq changes. In one version, it said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Hurairah said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam read Ameen, and he did it quietly. In another version, said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did Ameen, and he did it loudly. Now, let's say that the loud riwayat has been narrated by Imam Bukhari. Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yes. Yes.
This is only a hypothetical scenario I'm giving. This hadith is basically not like that, but I'm just giving you a hypothetical scenario. I can give you a better scenario when I look at it, an accurate, but this is hypothetical. So this hadith has got two versions of it. Okay, one says the Prophet ﷺ did Ameen and he was quiet, and the other says the Prophet ﷺ did Ameen and it is loud. And that bit is true. That bit is true, that you get the same hadith, but there's two different wordings, and that's where the ikhtilaf happens. Narrated by the same person. But let's say the one version in Bukhari, which is reading out the Amin loud, only Imam Bukhari narrated this, and one of the rawis in the isnad is somebody where Ad-Daraqutni has criticized. Although Imam Ibn Hajar vindicates, but there is kalam on him. Yeah. Let's say the one where he says the Prophet ﷺ did quietly, that version of the hadith, right, is mentioned is referenced in Abu Dawood. But in the isnad of the hadith, we have Malik and Nafi and Ibn Umar, which is known as Silsilatul Zahab, the golden chain, right? If we were to basically assess both of them, which one is more sahih, you have two ways of doing that. One is, this one is in Sahih Bukhari, this one is in Abu Dawood, right? We're going to go with the Bukhari riwayat because Bukhari is Bukhari. Imam Ibn Hajar is saying no. He's saying you will assess it individually. Here in the Abu Dawood riwayat, we have Silsilatul Zahab, we've got the golden chain. In the Bukhari riwayat, we've got a chain where one of the narrators have been criticized. Okay, we will give preference over the Bukhari hadith, over the Abu Dawood hadith than the Muslim, than the Bukhari. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's why he's saying, think of blue coats and Hume grammar. A Hume grammar student might just be on the brink of passing, and you might have a blue coat student who's a top class student. We will give preference to the blue coat student. وَكَمَا لَوْ كَانَ الْحَدِيثَ الَّذِي لَمْ يُخَرِّجَاهُ. And it might also be like the hadith that both of them have not included min tarjamatin, from the biography of someone who has been wusifat bikawniha asahul ahsanid. It has been described as the asahul ahsanid. كمالك النافع ibn Umar. فإنه ذا إسناد يقدم على من فرد به أحدهما, will be privileged over the one that only one of them has narrated. مثلا, for example, لا سيما, definitely إذا كان في إسناده من فيه مقال, definitely when in the isnad there is somebody who is or the isnad of Bukhari where somebody who has been criticized. Now we've finished the Sahih. The Hasan hadith is starting from here. I'm not going to go into the Hasan hadith. I think let me, Bilal, is it all right if I tell them what the idea is?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so we are taking a break next week, right? And let me get my diary. And where are we now? We're in July, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on the 15th of August, did we say?
Yes.
We resume. That's when we resume the class, right, Bilal?
Yeah, with the final session, yeah.
Yeah, on the 15th of August, we resume the class. That will be the final session for this year. When did your new academic year start?
It'll be end of September.
Okay. Okay, so the 15th of August is your final session. Okay, so today is the last online session, right, before Eid, and on the 15th is the final session, but that will be a live physical session because I will be in Oldham visiting my parents, and it will be a full day session. Okay, Bilal, how long is that?
We'll do something from like 10 to 4 or something.
Okay, so please do come 10 till 4. It will be a full day session. It'll probably be the only time that you will be able to meet me physically because I rarely come to Oldham. So inshallah, I'll see you on the 15th. But what I will also do is I will set you some homework. Where do you want me to set the homework now, or do you want me to set you over the summer?
I think over the summer.
Okay, setting it over the summer. Okay, I will set you some homework over the summer. You have the entire summer to do it, and then as soon as we resume classes, then you will have to submit that. It will be a portfolio where you have, like, it'll take you about a month to do it if you spend about an hour every single day. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Chalo. Does anybody have any questions? So we finished the lesson for today because I don't want to start a new topic, the Hasan Hadith.
Yeah.
Is there any questions from any of the students?
Yeah, Sheikh, I had another one. Is Hadith ever looked at from the perspective of where it's being narrated from? Like, does that have an effect on its authenticity in some kind of sense?
Like, for example, if a hadith of Iraqiyin and Shamiyin and things like that, yes. I don't think it has an effect on its authenticity, but it definitely has an effect on what we call the fard. تفرد به أهل الشام وتفرد به أهل so it might come into the category of fard, and therefore if not the hukum of the hadith, but the limit of the hadith might basically be circumscribed to the Ahl al-Sham. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But we do have that. تفرد به أهل الشام وتفرد به عراقيون. That comes a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? And did I answer your question? You had a question on the WhatsApp.
Yeah, I think you answered mine. I think Zain had a question.
Okay, what was Zain's question? I can't see my phone now because I'm using my phone.
He had one which was about the mudallis.
Okay.
Where is it? But you answered.
Yeah, carry on. See.
So he said, quick question: are all hadiths of a mudallis weak? E.g., if a mudallis uses the term sami'tu, can this hadith be sahih?
Yeah.
and then you responded to that. I think he did have like one from some time ago,
Okay.
which was on an usul thing about what was it? Ilm al-qat'i, is it synonymous to ilm al-yaqini?
Oh yeah. That's the same. It's the same thing. It's different terminologies. Yeah. Anything else? We've got 5 minutes.
I think that's it from me.
Okay. Any of the sisters? Sister Naima, do you have any questions?
No, Sheikh.
Okay. No other questions not related to hadith?
No, not today.
Oh, okay, then you get a letter 5 minutes early. Inshallah, I will see you on the 15th. As they say, fil lahmi wa shaham. Okay, in flesh and blood. Inshallah. Okay, take care. Assalamu alaikum.